Hi everyone, welcome to Scholar About Tarot. Just call me Mayfield and thanks a ton for stopping by the study space. We're actually at the original study space because I made some time to clean it up today. Today I wanted to actually give you a little bit of context of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So I'd really like to offer metaphorical flowers for Black tarot artists. And the reason why I'm doing that is because this is actually my second attempt at recording this video. And I've even mentioned it in my depthier review. During the script writing phase for DustIIOnyx, and part of the reason why DustIIOnyx took a really long time to record is because I got severely distracted by other decks made by Black artists. And it, not in like a bad way, of course, but whenever I would pick up the DustIIOnyx, I would also want to pick up several other different decks because I usually like to pair DustIIOnyx with other decks. And usually it would be decks by predominantly, African American artists. So like I would love to use the DustIIOnyx against the Afro Goddess Tarot or Lolu's Tongues of the Mother, but I'll show you guys a little more later. And I noticed that out of the 105 or so tarot decks that I have, about 10% of them are by African American creators or Black creators, or at least I think so. I'm not a math person. Anyways, I'd really like to take today to give metaphorical flowers to these Black creators for being here and having a space in my collection, because I just vastly appreciate all that they do, and despite the barriers that they may face, I still have their product in my collection. And as I list these artists and authors, I will say that I did list them and categorize them in a certain category. I will leave it to you to guess what that category is. In addition to giving folks their flowers, I also want to just briefly share what they do, a little bit about their biography, and also identify how they got into my orbit. So basically how I found out about them. So yes, there is an underlying message within this video on marketing in the tarot community, and just how difficult it is for people of color to be able to put themselves out there, and how much energy that actually takes, because there is a shocking amount of instances where Black creators fall off the face of the earth pretty much because their work isn't really getting the recognition that it deserves. Hence why it's so important to have reviewers. I don't know that I would consider myself a reviewer per se, but I guess I'll leave that to you to decide for me. If you'd like to just skip to the part where I talk about those nuances and those barriers, you could just skip to this time stamp, and you could just take a look at that and respond to that. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get down to the study space and take a look at these amazing works that, for many of them, I'm very lucky to have in my collection. First up, we have Krystal Banner, founder of Kaleidadope. She's a former engineer who made her first full tarot deck with the Kaleidadope tarot, which I do not have in my collection. I actually discovered her work through Kickstarter at the beginning of the pandemic with her project, the 2020 Visions Tarot. And it's just a majors only tarot deck. Box looks like this. Backs look like that. Her style primarily uses minimalism through pop art, allowing for a more secular and contemporary reading, as with the Life is Like a Board Game tarot, which is this one right here. These are the backs. The gilding is mine. I edged it with a Tombow marker. Personally, I really think that Banner's style of pop art works especially well with oracles. On her website, you may find some nostalgic 90s style oracle decks that are packaged like CD cases. themed as songs from like a carefully selected playlist. And you guys know that I love meta stuff like that. Although, of course, I will say that she makes an excellent archive, as I especially love the 2020 Visions Tarot. I used it primarily as a memento of 2020 and then as a journaling tool to really process my experience in quarantine and beyond. Her most recent deck, Signs of the Time Oracle, made some ripples through TarotTube a few months ago. And I think that's like where she really shines again, like just through her more secular works. And I think that's what makes it so easier to market, because it can be like very modern, very contemporary, and very easy to read and relate to. She is a pretty established creator that gets published primarily on Hay House, I believe. Although I as I understand it, it does seem like she still has both of these decks, at least this one for sure, that's available on her website. Next we have Carey Adela, CEO of Healthy Vibes. I learned about her affirmation deck from Havana's channel at Sparkle Divine Tarot. These are the backs. And here we go. Adela is a spiritual and personal coach with a background in social services and public health, which definitely checks out because the affirmations concisely package like the complexities of obstacles we may face in a down-to-earth manner. Most affirmation decks tend to be general yet fantastical statements that exist kind of in a vacuum, whereas Adela seems to offer context. Like, sure, I, a timid robotics scholar, can say that I'm a divine powerhouse who doesn't give any fucks, but isn't it more realistic to be able to say, I eat like I love myself, I move like I love myself, I speak like I love myself, I live like I love myself every single day? Like, doesn't that sound a little bit more accessible? See, this is kind of the power of art, beautifully illustrated by LA Inkwell. The art is so simple that it just adds Adela's complex message, kind of like a gift. Adela's most recent project is I Am, a children's affirmation deck, and I believe it should be available for purchase. Notty of Notty Designs is an artist and a spiritual practitioner, although she also has a YouTube channel. I discovered her work through eBay. Someone was selling her Twilight Dreams tarot. This is the backs, by the way. And when I discover a tarot that's unfamiliar to me, that I really like, I usually make it a practice to look up the deck and the artist first. That's where I found out more about Notty. She works largely with traditional watercolors, depicting the black femme form as supernatural beings, like fairies, mermaids, elves, etc. Things that we typically don't see ourselves being very often. She excels at illustrating the emotion and feel of a specific card through the facial expressions of her fairies, elves, and mermaids, like this one here, for example, the Six of Wands, a card of victory. The fairy is proudly standing away from the reader, but is looking back down at the reader like she just finished kicking my shit in and is super satisfied about that. And then the 7 comes back to finish the job. Anyways, I'm not really sure what projects that she's working on currently. Based off of her newsletter, she does seem to be offering tarot readings. She also sells a bunch of other merch that I think is worth checking out. Just be aware that there is a very long wait before your merch ships, but I'm very happy that she's pretty upfront about that. Okay, and now we have Andrea Furtick of the Afro Goddess Connection. First, I heard about her work from Queen Aset of Oya's Girl in her VR to Moon Baby's hashtag tarot collectors all the way back in 2020, if I'm not mistaken. Here are the backs. By the way, this is actually the limited edition that's like super holographic. The other edition I think does a little bit better with how big the cards are, but I prefer these backs than the other ones. Anyways, oh, it does have like a nice gold gilding too that doesn't bother my hands. So Furtick is a painter depicting the black femme and masculine form as divine. Her Afro Goddess Tarot is one of the first decks that kind of challenged my views on art and also allowed me to exercise my artistic preferences. And I feel like that's an awkward way of saying that I originally didn't not only like the backs of the standard edition, but you already know that, but I was actually unsure if I liked the art. At the time, I really just wanted to support Black creators when I could, but this art like really just kind of grew on me. That might be another video some other time. But anyways, what's next for Andrea Furtick? According to her now unavailable website, the Afro Goddess was possibly picked up by mass market publisher, and I'm super excited to see how it turns out. In the meantime, it does seem like Furtick is dabbling in creating an Afro Goddess doll line, which I think is actually kind of cool. Despite her website currently being unavailable, there is like a subscription that you can do, obviously like free, where you can be notified when the Afro Goddess Tarot is back in stock or available for pre-order or purchase or what have you, specifically through this mass market publisher. Joe Phillips, an American illustrator, comic book artist, and animator, has a whole ass Wikipedia page. Here's his tarot deck, the Divine Diversity. This is the box. And these are the backs. And this is the gilding that's like super bright sometimes. All right. I was first made aware of him and his work on the Facebook Tarot Marketplace, where somebody posted an ISO, so an in search of post, specifically for the Divine Diversity. I see divine, I'd see diversity. Naturally, I had to know more. And then out of nowhere, Phillips comes out with the second printing of the Divine Diversity on Kickstarter. So I'm pretty much sold. So he's a comic book artist. Like, he's worked for Marvel, DC, and Dark Horse. So Home Slice is legit. In addition to traditional comic book publishing, a lot of his work, as seen in Divine Diversity, centers LGBTQ plus places in just the happiest of ways. I saw his portfolio on his website, and it is just a chef's kiss. I was there for fun, softcore smut, and I was not disappointed. Currently, Phillips is working on a novel called Spellbreaker and a graphic novel adaptation of Snow White using a horror genre, as if, you know, it wasn't already, but hey, I'm here for it. I will give you a little bit of chisme in that in the Divine Diversity Kickstarter, it seems like there was a little bit of human error in getting all of the rewards out, but it was done. It wasn't like anything malicious. It seems like there was just a lot of like due to some medical issues, like he didn't notice it like immediately. He thought the job was done from what I can tell, but he is since on his way to remedying that. So I really respect him for being able to own up to that mistake and, you know, fix it as needed. Zoe, the Hurricane Mystic, is a West Indian artist and storyteller. I saw her first printing of the Stormroots Oracle on a walkthrough by Havana, and I had to get a copy of the Typhoon edition, which is what you're seeing here. I also had to zoom in just a little bit because these cards are super tiny. So this is these are the backs. We got another just really shiny gilding here. And here we go. So while her work is generally more polished than what you're seeing here, I really love this type of sketch art. There's a messiness that allows me to just frantically look around the card so I can see the whole picture in pieces simultaneously. I'm not sure if that made sense, but it pleases me. The way some of the images look, I would think that she enjoys doujinshi and manga. Like, that was my sense, especially when I looked at like a card like this here. I went to her website just to get a little bit more info on her, and it does indeed specify that she enjoys watching anime and reading manga, so I totally called it. Her website also has some upcoming projects listed, and I do remember that she was entertaining the idea of a Sailor Moon themed oracle on her Instagram, but she's been a little MIA on social media, and that does make me a little sad because I genuinely enjoyed like her engagement with posts from IG users like as small as me. Zoe is one of the most thoughtful creators. Like, she might leave you like a complimentary tea bag in your order, which is something that she absolutely doesn't have to do, but it is indeed a very nice touch. Lolu, creator of Akamara, centers her work on the African diaspora. I have absolutely no idea how I learned about Lolu and her works. If I'm being perfectly honest, I think I was just hearing whisperings of the Akamara tarot on social media, and at some point, out of sheer curiosity, I sat down and watched a couple of flip-throughs. So I'm vaguely certain that those walkthroughs of the deck were my first introduction of TarotTube, or to TarotTube. Needless to say, I don't have the Akamara tarot. I love sketches, so I do have the Tongues of the Mother. It's one of the few pip decks that I love working with because, as many other people will also say, it is an experience, and the art is simply just stunning to look at and so incredibly detailed even as a pip deck. Like, I don't know if you can see this, you should be able to, but there's like this silver foiling on it that's just super enchanting to look at. I mean, Lolu might be one of the more dynamic creators out of this list in regards to art style. So Akamara was minimal using line work, as is the Ashotella, which is what this is. And the Tongues of the Mother was sketched in what, like pencil? Her next tentative project, Adama, is done in digital art. And I just think that's so incredibly, she's just so incredibly talented to be able to do all of these different forms of art. And this is just my obnoxious way of saying that, like, this isn't even her main gig. And I note that because, like, this is Akamara is a passion project that she does as a hobby. Homegirl is a software developer, and I just think that it's awesome that she works so hard to have produced these decks for us, just as a side gig. And we will talk a little bit more about that like near the end of this video, but I did want to acknowledge just the hard work that she puts into this stuff. And I will also say that I do follow her website pretty often. Like, I'll usually stalk it for a good amount of time just to see what's available. Currently there's a lot of merch available. If I remember correctly, she cleared out a lot of her decks during Black Friday, where pretty much everything was 50% off. And I think Tongues of the Mother, if it's still available, should still be 50% off. I think that's the last deck that she has that may be available. Tayannah Lee McQuillar is an author. I found her work of the Hoodoo Tarot when I was actually working at Barnes & Noble and was shopping on our databases for upcoming decks that had not been listed for pre-order. It was a slow day and I was bored. So these are the backs of the Hoodoo Tarot. The edging is mine. I believe I edged this with I know it was an ink pad. I think it was the Distress Ink brand. So McQuillar is a researcher of religion and mysticism, but seems to have a couple of published works on rap music too. I am so curious on what program she studied in. My guess is cultural or ethnic studies, considering that range in areas of expertise. I know that the Hoodoo Tarot has a different artist, but I'm really glad that McQuillar created this deck. Definitely leave it to a researcher to include further readings in the actual guidebook. And if you haven't seen the guidebook, it's actually like pretty thick. Like it's an actual like book. And here's like the suggested reading. And what's awesome is that it's actually done in like pieces. So, you know, you can learn more about tarot and the occult. You can learn more about Indigenous Americans. You can learn more about historical backgrounds or Black secret societies. I just always appreciate that extra step in just assuring that we are well learned, or at least we have the opportunity to seek more knowledge about the context of what she's interested in showing us in these tarot works. We absolutely love to see it. Her other works include and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, the Sibyllis Oraculum, an oracle deck, and Rootwork, an older text on rootwork from 2003. She also has a lecture that's posted here on YouTube if you're interested. Safara is a Kenyan artist who was commissioned for the Tazama Tarot by Abusuapa. And this deck technically doesn't need any additional like introduction on my channel because I did talk about it recently on my video on It Takes a Village. But just for visuals, let's go ahead and run with this. So for those of you who haven't seen that video, the Tazama Tarot features African and African American figures that are taped into the context of the Rider-Waite Smith Tarot. It's one of the few RWS clones that I use consistently, and I have Havana, again, from the Sparkle Divine Tarot channel to thank for showing it off. I couldn't find any information on Abusuapa, the creator of the Tazama Tarot, except that they are a Black-owned publisher in the Netherlands. So I'm just going to talk about the actual artist that they commissioned. She has a pretty vibrant Instagram, and her general art style isn't too different from what we see in the Tazama, obviously, I guess. She works with digital collage, African aesthetics, and lots of florals. Oh, I will also say, because this script, again, it's kind of old, and I updated it, but I actually missed this little detail. I do believe Abusuapa did come out with a new Oracle deck. If you want to check that out, I'll make sure I leave that in the description, as well as Safara's Instagram too. And we also have Tia and Ian, founders of Grandma Baby Apothecary. Oh my goodness, not that word. Apothecary. They're the creators of the Black Gold Lenormand, which is another deck that really needs no introductions on my channel since it's been featured plenty of times. And I think I always start on this card because it's one of my favorites. And I just like to stare at it, to be honest. So in my Kickstarter rampage at the beginning of quarantine, I found their Kickstarter of the first edition of the Black Gold Lenormand and backed it immediately. Ever since receiving it, no Lenormand serves as a worthy replacement for me. Their work uses public domain photos of African American life from the Jim Crow South, ranging from the early 1900s to the 1940s and 50s. While their website states that their work centers on Black joy, I would say that it centers on Black life in general, the good, the bad, and the systemic. The first edition is available still, although there's also a second edition that's available, and from what I can tell, it's pretty different. It's tarot size with a lemon finish and hot gold stamping. There are some more card specs that really emphasizes how fancy it is, but I don't really know what UV varnish is. More importantly, the second edition has some selected cards with updated photos. I can't really say that I'm not curious. And last, but certainly not least, because her deck has a whole ass video dedicated to it, is Courtney Alexander, creator of the DustIIOnyx. These are the backs. We already know it has some pretty awesome matte yield. I know for damn sure I found out about her deck through Kim from the Abundant Life Tarot when she was gifted it during her depth year. And I remember just the sheer joy that she expressed when she received it. And that made me really excited for it too. So Alexander is a multimedia artist, a public speaker, and the only one on this list with a public CV and an artist statement, which is always appreciated. Her earlier work centers on her body and the politics of beauty, which I pause to say that is a legitimate area of study, even in my own field of American studies. If you're not familiar with what the politics of beauty is, it's basically an in-depth look at the way beauty is portrayed, not only in media, but the way that we treat people of different aesthetics and just the way that people look. It basically also takes a look at, well, that was loud. It basically also takes a look at how certain people from different ethnic backgrounds may be treated on the basis of the way that they portray themselves. So like the discussion on dreads in the workplace, like that's politics of beauty, depending on who wears it. Colorism can play into the politics of beauty as well. But with regards to the DustIIOnyx explores the intersection of Black identity, and I definitely see elements of the body within the deck. And had I done the DustIIOnyx book report in a little bit more of a traditional fashion, as opposed to just comparing it and contrasting it with Dr. Hartman's Lose Your Mother, I probably would have made like a specific section on the politics of beauty. Who knows? That might be a future video if I feel up for that. I definitely want to appreciate Alexander for this deck, because I think this might have been one of the first decks by a Black artist that I brought into my collection. It wasn't the first one that I bought, because I did have the Kickstarter from Krystal Banner and from Tayannah, but this is the one that got to me first and the one that I started working with. So, I mean, major props and major appreciations to Courtney Alexander for this wonderful work of art. Okay, so what did I learn here? Well, two things. Thing number one, I mean, Black art is a ton more diverse than I gave it credit for. I think I just had the stereotype in my head that all tarot decks and oracle decks that were made by Black creators were usually just a form of collage. And of course, like, I was also like that elitist dumpster that thought that collage art really wasn't my favorite. And I mean, while I admit that I am getting just a little bit collaged out, I mean, clearly there's plenty to love about it, especially when it's just done really well. And letter number B, and probably the reason why you skipped to this timestamp if you decided to. Marketing is hard, especially for really any marginalized artists, but specifically for Black creators, I would argue. I mean, many marginalized artists in general don't really have the time or the means to be constantly marketing their work. Many of people I listed haven't really been active on their platforms anymore as much as they used to be. Personally, it was like most alarming for me when the Hurricane Mystic pretty much like fell off the edge of the earth, because I feel like at that time when I noticed that they hadn't really been commenting much was after they had like, you know, idea after idea. And I was honestly kind of excited about some of the things that they were thinking about doing, but not really much ever came out of it, and that made me very sad and also very worried. Although recently I did take a look at I revisited their website just to kind of see if anything changed, and it looked like they were on hiatus like for medical purposes. So like I hate that they're like ill and not doing well, and I hope for like a speedy recovery, but at least I'm relieved that they're still around in some way, shape, or form. Andrea Furtick also shared her experience in a currently unavailable blog post. I really got to start screenshotting these things. Yeah, I wasn't smart enough to screen capture that at the time because I really needed it for this video. She basically describes how difficult it was for her to carry on her passion projects while she was working full-time and also providing for her children. Lolu is kind of in a similar situation, but she, as I alluded to earlier, like she has a full-time job. And again, this tarot business is kind of her passion project. Plenty of Black artists can't really afford to make the product that they love for an audience that's behind the added barrier of a paywall. And yes, it is kind of a paywall, because I mean, if you wanted to, if somebody wanted to market their stuff on like IG sponsored, I'm pretty sure that there's a cost to that. And yeah, I mean, that can be super frustrating because at this point, you are at the mercy of reviewers who may or may not be interested in the product that you have, or may have really not much of a business to show off like that product, because it's like this is almost inherently like a Black product. Like this is for, you know, African Americans, or it's just something that is associated with just being for African Americans. And so that can be a tad frustrating, but I understand that you know, tarot is a very niche thing that is growing, but you know, Black art is even more niche. But just to continue the conversation, I mean, if I didn't find these decks by accident and have the wherewithal to look them up, I would have had no idea like what these artists could have offered me in the long run. But you have to actively search for Black creators, which is probably maybe how you found this video, but a little more on that in a second. I mean, you have to actively search for Black creators in order to support them. And for a slightly easier time, you have to follow Black content creators. So I guess just be sure to follow the juggernauts like Abundant Life Tarot, Sparkle Divine Tarot, Ikali's Sunflower, and Oya's Girl. They're an excellent start, although I should note that it's really no secret that YouTube suppresses creators of color. And if you don't believe me, I went ahead and linked a video by video essayist FD Signifier, specifically on that topic alone, where, just to summarize, like, it's difficult for Black artists to really grow on this platform because the algorithm does not favor our faces. So sometimes we have to change up our thumbnail in order to garner a little bit more engagement. And what's specifically frustrating about this is that sometimes it is manufactured by the algorithm, sure, but also it can be manufactured you know, personally, like by your own personal biases. Not that I'm accusing anybody of being racist per se, but we do still have those inner biases that prevent us from wanting to interact with someone that we assume we can't relate to. If you're committed to keeping an ear out for any type of creators of color, it's imperative that you give like the smaller channels like active engagement, which is really my obnoxious way of telling you to like, comment, and subscribe. Seriously, comment though. I know for damn sure like the list that I gave you guys is not a definitive list of Black artists, of course. Like, this is a very just 2020 to 2021 type of list. I have not purchased very many decks really at all in the last year and a half, so I'm kind of out of the loop. Therefore, I think commenters should do their part and market some Black artists and content creators. I await your recommendations. With that said, I will see you next time. Bye.